One.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Daily Objective, and we're going to be talking about some of the interesting developments lately in the world of politics. Now, nothing should surprise anyone after the last several years of politics, but somehow Kanye West found a way to make jaws drop on Thanksgiving Day. He announced he's running for president and that he had just gotten back from dinner at Mar-a-Lago with Donald Trump and Kanye's personal guest, Nick Fuentes. Now, Nick Fuentes, if I tell you he's racist and anti-Semitic and wants to enslave women and all of these things, you might kind of groan and say, oh, that's just what the media, like you're so used to hearing people smeared that you might just assume this is just the media. No, this is the real deal, guys. I mean, take my word or don't take my word. Look up this gentleman. I think he's the guy who benefits from cancel culture because everyone else, innocent people, get canceled, and then it makes people trust this guy. And Republicans all too often actually defend him. But let's talk about this with a guy who, well, is he in Paris or something? It's Mark Pellegrino.
Close. I'm in Pittsburgh.
All right, you got on the call and said bonjour, so I didn't know if you were overseas or something.
Sort of my go-to. I only speak French in America, my friend, not in France.
Makes sense. So anyway, are you much familiar with this Nick Fuentes person?
Familiar enough to know that he's an anti-Semite and a racist and a jerk-off. And didn't the liar-in-chief claim that he had no idea who Nick Fuentes is, and pretty much everybody in the universe knows who Nick Fuentes is?
Yeah. Now, I'm inclined to take Trump's word for it because I would never accuse Trump of knowing more than he claims to know. Now, the fact that his response to this whole controversy is to say, I didn't even know him. And that Candace Owens gets on Twitter and she goes, I just want to be clear. I've had no contact with Milo or with Nick Fuentes, and that's not a shot at them, not a shot at either of them. I just don't know them. And that this is the response of these people, to read the room, to just be like, I don't know if I want to distance myself yet. Like, we got to sort of see how the other conservatives or Republicans feel about these people. Good Lord. I mean, if you can't distance yourself from someone like Fuentes, I mean, there's truly, it's then literally anyone who's not on the official left, anyone who's not on the left is cool with you. I don't know how much lower you can get than Fuentes. He openly denied the Holocaust. He has openly advocated for a policy that's very similar to ethnic cleansing or is ethnic cleansing. I mean, just name a topic, like name an arena, and he's on the authoritarian, collectivist, mystical side. He's obviously a huge theocrat, wants to impose religion on us or religious order in some way. And he's a real Catholic. What I mean is like the old school Catholics, like long before, or maybe during the same time, but certainly in the very, very old days, like long before the Reformation. Go ahead. Do you have something?
The kind of Catholics that burned witches and killed Protestants.
Yeah, and definitely before there was such a thing as Protestants, certainly. I know Catholics used to really treat the Jews badly, and they used to preach, the Catholics, they said, look at how badly the Jews are always treated. That's proof that they're cursed. So it's okay to treat them. Like, God clearly hates them because they're such a beat up people. So feel free to keep it going. And Fuentes, like other anti-Semites, other historical revisionists, uses the same arguments. He says, look at all the countries throughout history that have killed or kicked the Jews out. And I think that should raise suspicions that the Jews are up to no good, up to something. Yeah, I mean, how much lower? And anyway, and by the way, the Trump meeting with Kanye West is pretty controversial in of itself. I mean, this guy's running for president and he's meeting with the most notorious, outspoken of Jew bashers of the year. A guy who's fallen from grace so far that as Kanye West, and Trump he posts out on his website, on his Truth social media, he goes Trump, so he goes, Kanye's said many nice things about me. He didn't say anything anti-Semitic at dinner. Why wouldn't I meet with him? I don't know, maybe because you want to be president of a country that's not full of crazy people. Go ahead, Mark, you have some.
But this is not metric for everything. anyone who likes him or says nice things about him is cool, irrespective of their past or what they do. I think he would say the same thing about Kim Jong-un. He would say the same thing about Xi. He would say the same thing about Stalin if he were alive. Stalin says great things about me. I love the guy, Uncle Joe. That's his metric, and that's a 14-year-old's metric, and reason number 5 billion not to vote for him. But what gets me is knowing that Kanye is going to quote unquote run for president puts him in opposition with Trump. You think that would put him in the camp that Trump likes to insult and put down, right? I mean, he's trying to do that to DeSantis. Maybe he just doesn't see Kanye as a real threat.
Right. I mean, now Kanye came to dinner and asked Trump to be his running mate. So he asked Trump to be his vice president. It's goofy and silly. Now, so Kanye West, in his presidential announcement, like he announced he's running for president, he released 3 or 4 videos. And in one of them, he focuses much on Nick Fuentes, saying that Trump was really taken by Fuentes, impressed by Fuentes. And, Kanye then appeared in the introduction to Fuentes' podcast, where the episode began with Kanye on screen. Obviously, that's a name, right? You get Kanye on your show. You've, anyway, Kanye, he's acting like someone who just discovered like the dark side of the internet. And he's like, oh my God, I can't believe all this has been going on right under my nose. Like the Jews have been controlling things and history is not what we thought it was. And, and all of this stuff, and the left are raping our kids. Like, so all this is going on. Like he's just discovering this stuff on the internet, and he's basically throwing away everything for this. It's like this going down this rabbit hole is something that maybe should happen when you're young. You go down this rabbit hole, then you kind of look outside, you leave the house, you realize something's not quite lining up. The trash I'm reading online is not really in sync with the reality and the people I'm meeting. Like there's something wrong with this. You should not be in your 40s discovering all this, historical revisionism and all these conspiracy theories online, and then throwing away everything you've got in the name of this conspiracy theory.
I think he's having a late stage schizophrenic break. It's not just bipolar. He needs medication. It's really sad. And that Trump would invite him or allow him over for dinner just for clickbait, just to add controversy or keep himself in the headlines, whatever his twisted mentality is, whatever his reasoning is just disgusting. This is awful. This whole thing it's like watching the Mad Hatter and the Tea Party with the Mad Hatter, Alice in Wonderland. I feel like now presidential debates and even the process leading up to it is becoming like a WWF event. It's just a circus. It's just tomfoolery. It's silly.
Mm-hmm. Now, when Trump first appeared in the political scene in around 2011 or so, there was an actual so-called Tea Party movement going on. So Trump is like the Mad Hatter who showed up to that Tea Party and took advantage of some of the sentiments in there that were not for capitalism or individualism, but were more about the, overthrowing the whole establishment because there's too many deep state conspirators to contend with. So yeah, it's go ahead.
The Post is very anti-Trump right now. The New York Post, that's a conservative newspaper. And I think they've been busting his chops over Nick Fuentes for sure. And I'm sure some of the more level-headed, if there is such a thing, conservatives out there are going to start distancing themselves from it. I'm sure Ben Shapiro isn't a fan of any of this stuff that's happened. I think Trump is going to go bye-bye. I think the Republican Party is not going to accept him. I think they're going to run some more interesting people. I mean, not more interesting from our perspective necessarily, but for the population at large. And I don't think Trump wins the primary. And I think he turns third party. I think he goes bull moose, and I think he just tries to take the Republicans out. That's where I think this.
Yeah, and what's interesting to me is that Kanye and his sort of speaking of Jewish puppet masters, Milo Yiannopoulos, his campaign manager, I think is sort of in a weird way, kind of getting revenge at Trump, like kind of splitting the crazy vote as well. And maybe not getting any votes, but kind of taking a lot of the enthusiasm away from Trump because, oh, look, we found something even crazier, even more outrageous. A guy, you know, because Trump's big appeal is, oh, he's finally someone saying stuff that no one else will say. Kanye's definitely saying stuff that no one else wants to say. So, like, in a weird way, he's sort of splitting the Trump vote, possibly, or the Trump energy, in a weird way. I'm wondering.
In a very weird way, because in some respects, I think Trump's appeal was that he was fighting back against the left and this onslaught of irrationality and nihilism. And many people, without any philosophical background, but just an intuitive sense that this craziness coming out of the left was wrong. And also the past informing them that the Republicans never really pushed back. They were enthusiastic about that. Now, this element that's whoever is gravitating towards Kanye West is truly out in a different universe. They're not even grounded in a sense of reality. And maybe this reflects many Trump voters. I don't know, but a substantial number. Do you think a substantial number? He could draw off that much?
I don't know about votes, but energy, like excitement. If there's whatever controversy Trump can still generate is sort of maybe preyed on by the presence of Kanye pulling even bigger antics. So, you know, like, so the only difference in the phrasing I would say is that I wouldn't say Trump's appeal was that necessarily he was seen as fighting the left at first, but it just the establishment. So it's not about left or right or Democrat or Republican. It's the whole system that needs to be, you know, identified and overthrown. Now, Kanye is that on steroids, right? He's talking about the real deep state that we're not supposed to know or talk about, right? The real, the lizard people with no foreskin. Like, he's really going there. So it's read some super chats. Your internet's a tiny bit glitchy, so I can't tell if you're talking.
No, I'm laughing.
Oh, Marilyn with $3. Thank you for that. Roland with €5.99 says, if Mark were in Paris, he'd be saying bonjour. I don't know what that word is. Already dark on this side of the pond. Oh, that he'd be saying good evening. And okay, Marilyn with $3 more. Thank you.
Wow.
And also, Frank, in the chat is talking about atrocities committed by Protestants and others, non-Catholics. Yes, certainly. The anti-Semites as well as witch burners have definitely not been exclusive to Catholicism. Marilyn with $2 says, agree, Trump would go third party to fry the Repubs. I mean, I'm most curious about the future of the Republican Party, even if like Trump got struck by lightning and disappeared, or went to jail, which is certainly possible. Like, how do Republicans really recover from this whole circus? You know, there was a time when the Republicans were all behind George W. Bush, and then a few short years later, all Republicans are trying to outdo each other, distancing themselves from George W. Bush. Basically, Trump, I think he's going to go from like the official kingmaker of the Republicans to being like the biggest embarrassment that all Republicans need to sort of explain. And you're going to have, you know, on the debate stage at the primaries, questions like, you agreed with Trump on this, you supported his bill on that, you hung out with him on this date, like you voted with him on that issue. And people are going to have to say, look, I was doing what was right for the country at the time, but, you know, Trump, I definitely, I'm not him. Please, like, judge me for me. You're going to see some of that, I think.
Well, I predicted when Trump was elected that this could be the death knell of the Republican Party. And the situation you described definitely seems to lean in that direction.
Yeah. Now, go ahead.
Okay. We need someone else, right? We need a different party. We need, I say, the American Capitalist Party would be a fantastic replacement.
Mm-hmm. Now, are you running? Is someone from the ACP running? Because
No.
Okay.
It's the platform that needs to start at the grassroots. So let's start locally and build up from there. The duopoly can't. You can't take over the duopoly overnight.
Mm-hmm.
Although, as I said Or I did try to convert a couple of Republicans who were leaning libertarian, like Justin Amash. Every once in a while, he says something that's actually very intelligent on social media. He's gone into the anarchist wing of the Libertarian Party, unfortunately. But I tried to convince him to change his party affiliation to the American Capitalist Party, but he went for the Libertarians instead.
It's interesting, the fate of the libertarians. So many of them became the very alt-right people that we're discussing today. Like Fuentes himself says he was a libertarian growing up, and that's a common thing for neo-Nazis or whatever, however people want to call them, white nationalists. There, are people like Stefan Molyneux, who's he's less of an explicit like ethnic cleanser. He's not out there explicitly saying we need authoritarianism, we need order over the left, but he's definitely gone the racist route over the years and the statist route, and started off as an anarchist. So a lot of people go ahead.
The market did him in.
Can you repeat that?
Didn't the market do Stefan Molyneux in? He's done. I haven't seen him on social media in several years.
Yeah, he's been banned from everything.
Platform demonetized. Who knows where he is?
Mm-hmm. And he doesn't, unfortunately for him, he doesn't have, I don't think, the dedicated following of someone like Alex Jones or Nick Fuentes has that can kind of go with them to their, dark web corner of the web where they can keep it going and make a living. I'm going to guess Stefan is, out of money or just out of opportunities. But yeah, a lot of the current day statists, a lot of the racist statists started off once upon a time as sort of libertarian types. And then it's interesting to see that the Libertarian Party or various libertarian activists, they've sort of been overtaken by anarchist elements. Not that anarchists were ever completely divorced from them, but the anarchists have sort of taken over. But what kind of makes it all the more interesting is how sort of populists have sort of taken over all of the above. So you would think anarchists and populists might be opposed to each other. Nope. You would think, I don't know, libertarians are not popular. No. When you're entirely focused on beating something, when you see the left or the Democrats or the lizard pedophiles, a la QAnon, when you see the negative as your primary motivation, you're happy to be a populist. You're happy to go with whatever it is that you see as an ally, as a way to beat this evil. So yeah, that's what we're dealing with. That's what's going on. So you said you're sure that plenty of conservatives are going to or are denouncing Nick Fuentes. Yes, but no. It's not nearly as loud as you might hope. Like I said, people like Candace Owens are reading the room. Is it benefit us to denounce Nick Fuentes, or do we benefit more if we downplay how bad he is and just make it look like the leftist media are being unreasonable? These people have no honor. They stand for nothing. The only moral courage they have is to denounce, child groomers, as they describe, just anything that has to do with harming children, especially in a sexual way. That they have all the moral vitriol in the world, and rightfully so. But somebody's an actual Nazi. Well, I don't know. Read the room. Let's hear this. Let's wait this out and see where the pieces land. It's pretty pathetic.
The moral compromises that people make when they choose one tribe over another. You excuse the moral depravity of the person in your tribe, and it's an unfortunate and nearly universal state that we're in right now. It's not just the pundits who are doing it. You see people online doing it. They dehumanize each other, and they allow their compatriot, their fellow tribesmen, to do the most heinous and say the most heinous things on the planet.
Ain't it the truth?
Some of them aren't aware of the crimes the opposite tribe is committing. I mean, I see directors who've worked on Supernatural. One in particular, I have frequent conversations with on Twitter. He's not even aware of stuff that is going on the other side. He just knows his bubble, and that's it.
You're having exchanges on Twitter with the director of a show that you star in?
Yeah. Yes. No, well, a show that I was in. Yes, I have frequent battles with him.
I'm just curious. Is that good? Is that a good thing that you're having these exchanges with him?
Good for me. I don't care if it works.
Is it?
I don't care if it's not necessarily a good career choice. He says awful things that need to be countered. Like, they're just so bad. He's like the Archie Bunker of the left. And so I just feel like meathead. You got to stand up against that kind of bullshit in public. And just because I've worked with the guy doesn't mean he can't. I can't have a discussion with him about stuff he's posting. I mean, he's posting it aggressively, and it needs to be responded to. If it's an aggressive post, why not respond?
So a lot of people are not aware of how crazy the left has become or is, or how impactful the left is on the Democrat Party, and that's something he's not aware of.
And they don't know the corruption, or they don't know the corruption and the crimes that their own side is committing. I mean, he thinks the Hunter Biden laptop has just been, this, it's a sudden conspiracy. It's a sudden thing that's popped up. Not like it's been bubbling around in the background for 3.5 years or so. He's not even aware of that. He's not even aware of how inciting the politicians on his side are. If I remember correctly, Schumer threatened like violence if the Supreme Court didn't do his bidding or the left's bidding, and somebody ended up outside of Kavanaugh's house with a fucking murder kit, for crying out loud. But there's no outcry over that, and I don't even think he knows that. I don't even think he makes the connection, but he would if it were a right winger.
Yeah. It's hard to get a good opposition to the establishment left, because it's so difficult to get a sort of conservative movement void of conspiracy quackpots. The more I kind of look at things with a fresh set of eyes, ever since I acquired my Trump derangement syndrome, and fully just kind of realize what he signifies, in my view, I start to look back at, Fox News and Rush Limbaugh, and I'm like noticing how often they tell people, you better be armed. You better be aware that the left is everywhere. And yes and no. I mean, you can't scare a bunch of people in the middle of Pennsylvania telling them that, the aliens are landing, when it's just, I think reality is a bit more nuanced than that. And also, you need to be encouraging people to have sober intellectual discourse and get educated, rather than telling people, run away from schools. The schools are going to, I don't know. I've grown to see like the sort of left-leaning center as sort of where the hope is. I'm not sure if you see it the same way, but that's kind of where I'm at.
Because it's a package deal. It comes with a lot of statism that I simply cannot tolerate. But as intense as these conspiracy theories are on the right, they're rooted in certain observations. And the observations are that the left does have institutional capture of all of academia, from kindergarten all the way through college. And they are teaching awful things. They are intellectually disarming children. And I think confusing them and fucking with their psyches. And I think the positive part of that is people are pulling their kids out of school, and they're starting an education reform movement, which is not only privatization, but trade school options and homeschooling options that I think can protect kids from the latest educational fad that the establishment likes to experiment on with children. I mean, I grew up in the 70s when they were experimenting with kids by busing them in and out of districts, and the parents and the children had no say about where they could go. I could live in Van Nuys and be bused into Compton. Why? Not because I was a social experiment. I was being used to integrate communities, and it didn't. My own individual mind, my own safety was immaterial to the greater thing that the left was trying to impose on the rest of us. So no, center left, no. I think the whole thing has to go. I think that the statists on the right and the left have to merge. I mean, and it's hard for fascists and communists to like each other, but they're brother and sister. They should get together, and then there should be a full on individual rights party, uncompromising, and eventually that truth and the goodness of that, I think, kills the poison of the other. I mean, because really, in morality, in ethics and social ethics, I think there really is only one way to go, my friend.
Well, okay. I mean, the political sort of battle is sort of one thing, and I don't think there are many communists anymore. I think we're all fascists now. We meaning not you and I, but in the culture. So like the Chinese Communist Party, I think, can arguably be said to be more fascist than communist at this point, and fascism is plenty scary and horrible. But when I say the center left is kind of where I see hope, is like I'm looking for intellectual respect. I'm looking for a sober, and I'm looking for critical thinking. And, Ayn Rand certainly of all people, pointed out how horrific education is and what it does to the minds of people. But she also pushed her own students into the universities. She understood, and I agree with her, if I understand her, that the intellectual battle needs to take place within the system, within the universities, or within where things are studied and discussed and transmitted further. And in that respect, I see the sort of left-leaning center, people who they're not into the woke leftist stuff, and they're not into the populist Trumpism. They're looking to have calm and thoughtful discussions. That's what I mean when I say the center-leaning left. Go ahead.
Yeah, that Rand did the Ford Hall Forum, which was largely a liberal forum. And she did it because she understood, as we do, that liberalism has a tradition of intellectuality, of seeking the truth. I consider myself a liberal, but I don't. I mean, she was doing that in the 60s, right? I don't remember when her last lecture was, but certainly the left has been taken over, and taken over by something really insidious and anti-intellectual. And maybe those center-leaning guys are talking about, maybe I can't call them the classical liberals, because they still have that orientation, that Wilsonian orientation, that the state should sort of be not the arbiter of all things human, right? They can make up the spaces that the market can't, and that it enforces a social contract of mutual obligations between each other. And I disagree with that fundamentally. But there may be, you're right, in this sense, there's people jettisoning from the left who are intellectuals, who are nonetheless open-minded and could be susceptible to turning towards classical liberalism again, as opposed to the Wilsonian hard state left turn that we took a century ago.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I see people like Steven Pinker, Sam Harris, Lex Fridman, even though he's more of a what's up?
Sam Harris is unhinged now. He's out of his mind. He's not rational.
What makes you say that?
Well, because he makes incredible claims with respect to Trump that just are unhinged. You and I, you say you have Trump derangement syndrome. I don't. I dislike him. I think he's a buffoon, and I'll never vote for him. And I do think he's harmful to the country. But I wouldn't like whatever he said. What did he say? Something about dead people in his basement over voting for. He made this incredible. Maybe Daniel could recall.
I remember what he said. I mean, I could address that. Yes, it was a dumb statement for a number of reasons. It was clearly said off the cuff. Maybe it's inexcusable. But the reason I bring up someone like Sam Harris is, after that whole thing blew up, he released an hour-long podcast trying to explain what he was trying to say in that clip and how he views the issue. And that, to me, that process of explaining carefully, here's how I arrived at my conclusion, that to me is what I'm looking for, as opposed to someone like Jordan Peterson, who spends all day tweeting red meat for excitable people, telling them how the system is against them, and then gets on YouTube whenever he's under attack and announces, you'll see who cancels who. Like, he's riling up excitable masses. That's not what I see Sam Harris doing.
Well, yeah. I mean, I see sort of what you're saying, but at the end of the day, Sam Harris denies free will, and somebody who denies free will and thinks people are determined by all these exterior forces and/or genetics always relies on the state and or scientists to manage the individual human life. So he can explain himself till he's blue in the fucking face. He's an authoritarian creep when it comes down to it. Now he's justified it through, accepting a certain philosophy and through his take on neuroscience, but he's still creepy as shit. Now, and I think when he slipped and made that just outrageous comment, he was letting loose something deep inside his psyche that he definitely should have tried to explain. But I think it demonstrated the real dark side of Sam Harris, and he is a dark side. And look, and that's what we have now. We have two dark elements. The crazy Jordan Peterson types and the crazy Sam Harris types who are articulate and can explain themselves in depth, even though the fact that they're explaining themselves is a contradiction of the very premises they hold. Right? He doesn't think you have free will.
Look, yes, it is a sad day that when people who have Ayn Rand's philosophy still need to deal with determinists and to argue with religious people, mystics. I mean, it's sad, but this is the time we're living in, and this is who we have to deal with. And these people are virtually all of them mixed bags. So yes, Sam Harris is a determinist, as are most secular thinkers. And that doesn't mean that's not enough sufficient to say that therefore he's a complete statist. He is basically a liberal person. He believes in the basic freedom to live. So we can't call him a statist.
I can, because he's written it. He's written it. He believes in the Platonic philosopher kings. He believes that scientists will be able to modulate your moods and bring peace to your nervous system by controlling you, in essence. That's what he's written. I mean, that's fairly dark to me. And as much of a conversationalist as he is, and as open as he seems to be with respect to his podcast, which I used to listen to all the time when I thought he was smart. He is smart, but is he really open? Is he really open to discussion and change, or is he an academic who thinks he knows everything? You think if a Yaron Brook went on his show, I'm not sure if he has or not, and discussed the concepts of objectivism, which I think Sam Harris despises, do you think there would be any movement in Sam Harris's camp towards objectivism? I doubt it.
Listen, I'm not exactly the world's biggest Sam Harris fan, or saying that he can do no wrong. Hey, maybe he is a total scumbag. What I like about him, sorry, I can't hear you.
Heard rumors that you're dating.
What? Can you repeat that?
I've heard rumors that
that me and Sam are dating. Yeah, I didn't really want to say that yet, but yeah, no. What I like about him, what he represents in the culture, and I haven't read his books where apparently he's saying he wants a 1984-esque, science and government manipulation of your brain. There's a lot wrong with him. And if left unchecked, of course, his ideas lead us to authoritarianism, and Brett Weinstein and his creepy brother, left unchecked, their ideas lead to eugenics and all types of biological stuff. Jordan Peterson, if he's not explicitly a theocrat at this point, certainly I think his ideas are getting us there. I don't like any of these people in terms of the philosophy that they're conveying, but what I'm turning away from and running away from are excitable, charlatans who are appealing to uneducated country bumpkins that want to feel like a victim. And I don't see someone like Sam Harris doing that. I see him calmly and with critical precision taking you through the process of his thought, of his thinking. And that to me is where the battle is. That's where we can reach. His audience can be reached by objectivists, and that's my opinion.
I've had discussions with his audience, and I don't think they can be reached. Once you deny free will, you deny lots of aspects of human agency, period, and you give up a lot.
But can you then have a conversation with anyone who's not an objectivist? If they're not a determinist, they're most likely religious. Can you really reason with a mystic?
Can you? No, not really. I mean, you can't. When people give up reason for for whatever their value is, either because they believe they're determined by these outside forces or because they believe God controls everything. Can you have a real conversation? It's a pseudo conversation that you can have. I don't think you can. I was asked recently in an interview if you could be friends with somebody who completely and totally disagrees with you. And I said, well, yeah, well, I think you could be acquaintances with them. I think you could go out to dinner and have a good time with them. But can you be friends with people whose values are completely antithetical to your own? And not if you take your values seriously, not at all. And these people take their values seriously, and they defend them for everything they're worth. And they defend them fairly articulately. I mean, as fucked up, excuse my French, as Jordan Peterson is, he's articulate. I mean, he speaks in circles, and it's convoluted and crazy, but it sounds articulate, and the music of it, I think, appeals to people. And Sam Harris is straight out articulate, right? He's a very rational thing. You can see the process of his reasoning. It's actually sort of nice to listen to somebody like that, but he's messed up too. Yeah, and those are our options now. As I said before, that's why the whole thing needs to go.
What does that mean? The whole thing needs to go. What does that mean in reality?
These people, you can't appeal to either of them. Sam Harris is invested in the idea that you have no free will. He is he's morally invested, he's intellectually invested, he's monetarily invested in it. That's a very hard thing to release. Go ahead.
I'm not suggesting that Sam's mind can be changed. I don't think any 50-year-old man, career intellectual, can, in most cases, have his mind changed. But I'm saying in terms of like who I respect or who I see as a better conversation partner and in order to reach their audience, and who I respect Jordan Peterson very little, given what I've seen from him in his tactics of riling up an excitable audience, versus someone like Sam Harris, who I respect for slowly, calmly taking you through the process of his thinking. But yeah, at the end of the day, objectivists should just make the case for objectivism. It's not really about engaging with others per se. So that's, yeah.
Well, I mean, I think it's valuable for those thinking people out there who are not objectivists to have the contrast of a Yaron Brook and a Sam Harris. I think, or a Peikoff, who wouldn't do it now, or an Ankar Gate or a Greg Salieri, squaring off against somebody of the stature of a Sam Harris. I think that does tremendous good for objectivists and non-objectivists alike. They get to see the flaws and errors in the thinking that they presume to be, the highest that the culture allows now. So I'd like to see those arguments take place. I just don't think any of them have the I don't think any of them have the courage to actually engage like that. I don't think Sam Harris would. Jordan Peterson, in the beginning of his career, when he was sounding more reasonable and when he had a just cause behind him, actually came to an objectivist conference and had a discussion. I thought that took courage and cashews. And he had my respect at that time. He's lost it since because he's given over to the dark side of the force at the moment. But there's I mean, as articulate as some of these people are, and maybe you're saying there's that grain of hope because they're rational and they believe in a rational process. Someone like Pinker can be touched. Maybe Sam Harris can be touched. I'm less confident.
My point is not that Pinker himself can be persuaded, but it's that, like, this is where the conversation can be had. It's in a calm and sober environment rather than an excitable and hyperbolic sort of arena. And, at the end of the day, I do maintain that if there is any hope, it's in that type of setting, a calm, intellectually respectable environment. And to the degree that objectivists can infiltrate universities, I think that's the ultimate battleground. So it's the least exciting of all battles. You hardly notice it's taking place. So yeah, it's not a great day to be an objectivist in terms of who you have to pick from for conversation partners. I think, like, in her essay for The New Intellectual, Rand said something like one of the basic things that a new intellectual needs to hold is that, like, force is wrong, like the initiation of force is wrong, like that the government should not be initiating force. Yeah, and that leaves you with very few people to align with or to consider one of the intellectuals you want to talk to. It's not a great day. We got super chat from Kirk, $2 saying criticizing Trump. What are you, on the left? Well, that's it's a little bit outdated, Kirk. Don't you mean criticizing Kanye and Nick Fuentes? What are you, on the left? I mean, that's really where we're at this point. You have a lot of people downplaying anything being wrong with Nick Fuentes or anything wrong with what Kanye West has said in recent months. They're just like, oh, no, that's just the leftist media telling you what to think. So, I mean, this to me is like the biggest problem. It's that the anti-intellectual voices are just drowning out the discussion altogether. So I see strength in sort of the more of the calm and sober discussions, like people like Lex Fridman are having them, and people like Sam Harris. And even if there's plenty of flaws with Sam Harris, to me, that's kind of where there's hope. I've been turning into a real objectivist. You know, that's a phrase that actual alt-right elements of the objectivist scene came up with a few years back. Actual, like, Nick Fuentes fans, people who downplay anything being wrong with the alt-right and act like the ARI are just a bunch of immigration files who are betraying the legacy of objectivism, or worse yet, that Rand was wrong and that Nick Fuentes is onto something. Maybe I'm a little bit encapsulating unfairly, but that's what I am. Part of being an objectivist, which I now hold myself to be, is wanting to have a conversation with Sam Harris and understanding that Republicans are in some ways worse than the Democrats, that Fox News is trashier maybe than all the other cable channels. So, like, that's to me is part of my objectivist awakening, and that's where I'm at.
They are objectivists. I wouldn't say that about. I would say that probably about Fox commentary, but I definitely wouldn't say that about Bret Baier. I think Bret Baier is a decent journalist. I think he really tries to be fair. Certainly more fair than the folks I've seen on MSNBC and CNN. So I think he's one of the actual top tier guys out there at the moment. You can say what you want about all the commentary, because that's true. The commentary is going to be lame in a lot of respects, but this is the world we live in.
It sure is. I remember Bill O'Reilly saying the exact same thing all those years ago, that someone was accusing Fox of being corrupt or whatever. He said, so you think Bret Baier is a right-wing liar? Like, you think it's all about Bret Baier? God bless him. He's the Atlas of Fox News.
Well, he's the Atlas of news at the moment, as far as I'm concerned, but I hate to be in the same camp as O'Reilly. But clock is right twice a day. So,
or you can come over to the objectivist side and not have to deal with any of these people.
Right over there. I'm on the how would you say it? I can't be a centrist, but I'm firmly objectivist, but certainly not on the right or left.
All right. Kiana Pellegrino with $10 says, hi all. Thank you. Frank with $2 says, does disavowing really work? Too little, too late? I mean, who wouldn't disavow a terrible person? I mean, like I say, if Nick Fuentes was a pedophile, like if that was his claim to infamy, like if Nick Fuentes was wanting to legalize, sex between adults and the young, of course, Republicans and conservatives, as soon as they found out he was at dinner with Trump, would say, God, this guy belongs nowhere near any of us. We want nothing to do with this guy. So, yeah, but if he's a Nazi, let's read the room. Let's see what's safe. Let's see what the right course is. So it's pathetic.
As you said, you can't necessarily say that Trump, knows everyone who's coming over to his place for dinner. I think he should, though. I mean, I certainly wouldn't invite anybody to my house whose values who had such crappy values as Nick Fuentes. And if you're the aspiring president of the United States, again, you got to know who's coming to dinner, man. You got to know who's you. So he's once again lying, which is sort of stock and trade, right?
No, I don't think Trump invited Kanye or his guests. So I don't think Trump invited them. And also, I believe Trump didn't know who he is. Again, I would never accuse Trump of knowing anything. But the fact that his response to the whole thing is, well, I don't even know the guy. Like, not like, oh, wow, I'm, the proper PR corporate response is, we're as upset about this as you are. We had no idea, right? You're at least supposed to say that, whether you mean it or not. But he's just like, I don't even know the guy. And I like Kanye. He's nice to me. So, why shouldn't I have him over? It's just, he's
a child. It's like he's just a child. He's a child who got caught with his hand in the cookie jar again.
Yep. And he probably is still the most popular Republican candidate. So you got to wonder if this is real, if this party is really the all it's cracked up to be.
He can't win. I don't think he'll win. And if he does, it's truly the end of the Republican Party.
I have a hard time imagining Republicans winning anything anytime soon, like in terms of the federal national level, like many seats in Congress or the presidency. I mean, they have a lot of baggage right now, and it's not going away because Trump is still there. He's still running, still plaguing them. It's only getting more outrageous now. Kanye West bringing just the worst elements of the internet into real life, to Trump's personal estate. These guys have a lot of baggage. They've seen better PR days. That I'll tell you. 7 p.m. UK time today. It's the Briefly Objective premiere with Harry Binswanger called "Can You Be Certain a Ball Will Fall?" Yeah, you ever think about it? You throw it up and it falls down, but how do you know it will fall down until it does? I guess is sort of the.
Wow, that sounds like it's going to be a barn burner.
Well, if people like David Hume were answered in their own lifetime, we might have never had a German counter-enlightenment, and hundreds of millions of lives would not be devastated in Europe and beyond. So we wouldn't even be dealing with progressive education today. So we might want to get back to that ball question.
I'm in
the BQ. What's that?
I'm all in.
All right. Then at 9 p.m. UK time today, it's HBTV with Harry Binswanger and special guest Gene Maroney on Central Purpose. Where do I find one? Would you say acting is your central purpose, Mark, or is tweeting? Okay, that came off a little bit. But don't you think you're kind of putting your central purpose in jeopardy by arguing with your boss or arguing with a potential? I don't know.
He's a hired gun who works for shows. And my central purpose is to stick to my values and and have integrity. That's my central purpose. And if it means that I get booted from Hollywood, I'll teach. I'll do something else. I'll find another way of making bread and onions, right? That's what acting is. Acting is putting bread and onions on the table. But is it my central purpose? No, I wouldn't say that.
Okay. I used to say if you do get completely blackballed from showbiz, at least they'll hire you at the Daily Wire to be in one of their movies. But given your recent tirades against the Daily Wire and their acting division, I'm not sure that's even true anymore.
Yeah, Burning Bridges is the title of my biography.
All right. Thank you all for joining us today. Before we burn any more bridges, we're going to end it there. Thank you, Mark, and thank you, everybody, for watching. Good to see so much greenery on the scenery. All the members, hit that join button to become a member. Leave a super thanks with your comments, your questions, or just to support the channel, and hit the join button to become a member. Thank you all, and goodbye.